There's gonna be peak oil! But there isn't. But there could be. We're going to go through the top 5 examples that are not up for debate, where the left has gotten it verifiably false. People say, well, you say they're always wrong, and of course we try to source everything and provide overlays, but in this case we're going to go through some very, very specific examples. But I want to lead with this. With the whole Russia witch hunt right now and the FBI and Mueller, President Trump wanting to investigate the FBI, more Americans right now, when you look at the polls, have less faith in our institutions than ever. But could that be is that really that bad of a thing? I understand that we need some faith in our institutions. We need to have some respect for the office. But is it a bad thing for Americans to say, you know what? Turns out that the FBI can be politicized. Turns out I don't necessarily know that I trust some of these organizations. I go back and forth on that.
Science can be politicized.
I go back and forth on that. I would love to hear your opinions. Also, some other examples, if you think, of the right or the left getting it wrong historically. So recently, this is where the left got it wrong. They said that Trump was not spied on by the Obama administration. They claim the FBI was not spying on Trump. Remember this, everyone?
Yeah.
You can go look for more stories. We have them at
Never happened. Never would happen.
And I said, well, there weren't so much spies, but there were spies. We just call them informants. Here in their own words.
What about this notion that there was a CI, a confidential informant, embedded in the campaign? Is that true?
Well, as we've seen, unfortunately, the identity of this informant is now out.
You said there was no informant!
And if this is a fairly benign tool available to the FBI, given all the other capabilities available to them.
We could have screwed you worse? Is that what he did?
This is what I'm talking about. The left never gets called on it. We were just talking about this last week with Venezuela.
Because they own all the people who would call on it.
When you look at what the informants are not. You said there were no spies. Well, yeah, there were spies, naturally. But if really, no. We don't just get to move on that.
Yeah, but it's okay.
You're saying President Donald Trump is right. Well, yeah, he's right. But the thing is, no, stop. Stop the words that are making sentences that are coming out of your mouth. And this has happened for a long time. Let me run you through some examples. So let's go top 5. Number 5 is peak oil.
My favorite.
Remember this? I don't know on how many bumper stickers.
Yeah.
I don't know on how many signs are there. The term peak oil. So much so that now they don't use that term. People say, what do you mean by peak oil? So since the 1950s, right, the left has repeatedly claimed that we'll reach a point of maximum extraction of oil resources, but this specifically applies to petroleum, but generally they kind of apply it to overall resources, that when it's reached, we're going to reach this terminal decline.
Yeah, because I hate oil.
As recently as 2010, by the way, Paul Krugman claimed that peak oil has arrived.
Oops.
Right? You've never seen these kinds of costs at the pump as you do in 2018. So what's the truth? This is proven verifiably false. U.S. hit a record high in oil production alone in November last year than an even higher record in February. We have arguably more access today to natural resource, to gasoline and natural gas than ever in recorded history, and we're finding new ways. Imagine if we'd have enacted the policy that the left claimed we needed. Right? We're not even getting into climate change, just the peak oil.
Yeah.
Not true. Okay, number 4. I've talked about this, but I think it's pretty important. AIDS. All right? Listen, the left claimed that AIDS was going to turn. They claimed it already was an epidemic.
Yeah. Yep. Everybody.
Oprah said about AIDS, I think she said this in 1990. Maybe she said it in 1989. She said, AIDS has both sexes running scared. Research studies now predict that 1 in 5. Listen to me. Hard to believe. Yes, Oprah. 1 in 5 heterosexuals will be dead or could be dead from AIDS at the end of the next 3 years. 1 in 5. Believe me. No. Verifiably false. AIDS became the single most research-funded disease ever in modern American history, despite being a statistical non-risk. Money that could have been better spent on, cancer. Or the kid with diabetes that he didn't ask to be born with. Here, you don't want to catch AIDS in the United States? It's not a 1 in 5 stat. If you are not having gay anal sex in a truck stop with complete strangers or using hypodermic needles that you're sharing with other people, guess what? Your statistical chance of getting AIDS in North America is 0%. More money than any disease in modern America. Thanks, Oprah. Number 3. This is a big one. The Star Wars missile defense system. Ooh. This is something that everyone, and you've probably heard this term to the point where you even think that it was Ronald Reagan's term. It's not. Sven Computer is going to educate on us on that a little bit later. Everyone mocked President Reagan and said it would never work. Let's roll some clips.
Many American politicians and scientists campaigned against what they saw as Reagan's expensive folly.
The heavens are for wonder, not for war. Stop Star Wars. Stop weapons in space.
Okay.
Reagan's
there's more.
critics
Yeah,
said that
model.
SDI was hugely expensive and would never work. They were appalled by the deep cuts in welfare programs that would be needed to pay for it.
We'll talk about that with Mark Levin later. That's saying that, you look at Winston Churchill, he was immediately ousted.
Yeah.
After his the first general election,
Bye-bye.
because thank you for helping protect us. Now we want free crap.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
You're not
Well, I
gonna-
couldn't believe they'd be cutting welfare to protect themselves from the communist Russians.
And nuclear missiles.
Talk
Come
about
on.
not understanding the role of government. Well, here's the truth, right? They mocked the defense system, which Ronald Reagan had. They coined it Star Wars missile defense system. The ensuing arms race helped bankrupt the Soviet Union. And the system, by the way, it's used today and works perfectly in Israel. It's used in cities across the globe today. We know that it works, but they use this term Star Wars missile defense to make it sound like there was a stupid actor. By the way, at the same time, they were advocating nuclear disarmament. Just so you know, that's not only about the missile defense system.
Yeah.
They didn't think we should have nukes at all. Do you give us that one? Sven Computer, you were saying about the Star Wars missile defense.
Yes, so
you were trying to find who actually coined that term.
Yeah, so Reagan never used the term Star Wars defense system. He coined it Strategic Defense Initiative.
Right.
And then an author, named Arthur C. Clarke, who wrote science fiction books, apparently used the term in front of Congress, and then all the media latched onto that because they thought it was genius to just call it Star Wars.
Never let a good story get in the way of the actual facts. They could probably actually help people, but it's more fun to make fun of somebody and say Star Wars than it is
Right.
to protect against nuclear.
Well, the thing is, this is actually one of those deals where if you try to Google it, all the articles say Ronald Reagan's Star Wars missile defense system.
Yeah.
They all actually attributed it to him because they wanted people to think that he was a dumb actor. A dumb actor who stared down the Soviet Union, by the way, and won. You were wrong about that. You were wrong about the Missile Defense Initiative, and you were wrong about nuclear disarmament. Right? Right. Okay. Number 2. This one's really important. We've talked about it. The Model Cities program, parentheses, all subsequent government welfare programs designed thereafter. So this is one that is, again, very...
Yeah.
We don't want to sit here and debate socialism with you on a philosophical level, whether you think it's a moral imperative to share. Hey, we're just going to look at some examples here.
Empirical data. Some would say.
Can we admit that the war on poverty in the United States hasn't worked?
Nope. It never works.
Can we admit that?
Yeah.
It failed. It hasn't worked statistically. The Model Cities program, right? If we look back at Lyndon Johnson, Detroit was one of the model cities. They took a city that was the wealthiest city in the country and said, "Now we're going to put in some welfare incentives. We're going to piggyback off of the success of Detroit and claim credit for it." And there goes Detroit. Wow.
Oh, well, that sucked. Blame the Republicans.
The welfare state destroyed families. It incentivized single motherhood. Since launching the war on poverty, out-of-wedlock births have skyrocketed. Poverty has been nearly completely unaffected. It's one of the war on poverty, the Model Cities program. This is one they said this was going to solve the problem. And of course, if you look at it, not only did Model Cities not solve the problem, but then you look at other programs. Oh, this is going to solve the problem. And then you end up putting Band-Aids on top of the tourniquet that you initially put on there when you couldn't fix the wound. I get the spirit of it.
Yeah.
You don't want war. Well, neither do we. I get the spirit of it. You don't want poverty. Well, neither do we.
Yeah.
The difference is, historically, you were wrong. Historically, you were. Do you realize that Tom Hanks, did you ever see that on MSNBC where he talked about World War II? He said, we went into World War II. I don't remember the exact quote, based on fear-mongering and racism.
Yeah, this is the guy who came up with Saving Private Ryan.
It's like World War II? Isn't that one that you would just we talk about common ground?
Yeah.
World War II is a war you're going to argue over? I don't know how we get here. All right, which brings us to number 1, because we talked about this last week, Venezuela. This is really
Wonderful
important
country.
because it obviously points to socialism at large, but the left consistently, and now they're trying to distance themselves.
Yeah.
No, we have to go, no, come back in here. Here's Venezuela. Here's Sean Tutt.
This is your child. This is your child.
It bears a striking resemblance, Bernie. Son of a bitch! So the left praised Venezuela and, of course, other South American socialist countries ad nauseum. Roll clips.
So here you have an extremely rich country, enormous wealth, highly concentrated, most of the population living in near misery. And finally, there's a government that's actually doing something for them. They
You're the most brilliant American thinker, Noam
his
Chomsky.
policies happen to be, it's felt by the population that they've got the first government in the history of the country that's actually doing something for them.
And everybody was totally convinced that Castro was the worst guy in the world, that all the Cuban people were going to rise up in rebellion against Fidel Castro. They had forgot that he educated their kids, gave them health care, totally transformed the society. You know, it's funny, sometimes American journalists talk about how bad a country is because people are lining up for food. That's a good thing.
Disagree. But this is one of those things where, again, they just, and they move on to the next thing. Well, they didn't do socialism properly. He was praising Castro. And by the way, that's not that. You can also find Michael Moore claiming that Cuba's healthcare system was better than the United States as recently as Sicko. And I remember because the Canadian press,
because of a poll.
because of a poll, the Canadian press praised it. So now, only now are they trying to distance themselves. Here's something else that's really telling to me when you look at that. He says, he forgets that Castro gave them health care. Oh, what does that mean about Bernie? Okay, listen, Bernie bros, you love him, you think, oh, socialism would work in the United States. What does that tell you about Bernie? It tells you that Bernie believes Castro has the authority to grant you health care, which means he has the authority to take away your rights, to take away the rights from private companies. Look at what happened in Venezuela. You saw John Oliver praising the fact that Chavez took control over the banks and they decided to fire executives. They cheered for it. That should tell you if Bernie Sanders is ever elected to office, he believes that he can grant you rights like free healthcare, like free internet, like free insert whatever it is you want here. And he also believes that he will have the authority to take those away. That is bone-chillingly scary. Spoiler alert, everyone's starving in Venezuela, okay? Exactly. It looks like the Karate Kid bullies in their skeleton costumes. It is an absolute horror show in Venezuela. Everybody now acknowledges that it sucks. And I think that we can all agree that Cuba didn't do so well under Castro for a while. Did Bernie Sanders come out and apologize? No. For Cuba, let alone Venezuela, did Sean Penn come out and say, ooh, wow, you know what? I was wrong. Maybe he's not the most beautiful human being alive. Lord. They never get called on it. Joe Biden makes up stories about meeting people that he's never met in places that don't even exist. Right now, we're talking about this today. We're not spying on Trump. And they say, well, what about this spy? Well, yeah, we do have informants on Trump. He just said you didn't. I don't know what you're talking about.
Keep moving on.
What were you were going to say something, Keacher?
At some point, you just wonder if the left just loves lies. I mean, they love these lies and they live by them, just like they like the lies that of artificially inflating prices of gasoline to compensate for the lack of peak oil.
Exactly. Yeah.
They just love the lies.
We're going to run out, but we have a major supply glut.
There's going to be peak oil. But there isn't. But there could be. But there isn't. Could be. There is not.
But there is.
It's entirely possible. No, it's not, Bernie, unless you get your policies implemented, you authoritarian asshole. By the way, this is not even to mention some of the more current topics. We want to hear from you what you think are prime examples. This doesn't even include Obamacare claiming that it would lower premiums, deductibles, while you could keep your doctors if you like your doctors, Dodd-Frank, and of course the fact that Donald Trump would never, ever, ever be president. Look at that. We've turned the tables on Al Gore and used the internet to our advantage. If you like this video, subscribe by hitting the subscribe button or the notification bell next to it, because subscribing isn't enough. Watch one of these other videos and, listen, you can stick around. You don't have to. But here's the thing. The fact that you're still listening to me saying stick around, as I say stick around and you're sticking around, we just added another ad. You just made me 4 more cents.